Have you ever really stopped to think about how your day unfolds? We tend to fixate on the big life-altering decisions. But what if the entire path of your day, or your week, or even your life actually hangs on choices so small you barely even notice you're making them?
So, yeah, that's the big question we're going to dig into today. We're going to unpack how these tiny, seemingly insignificant moments, I'm talking that extra 5 minutes of scrolling at night or which coffee shop you decide to pop into on a whim, can actually set off these huge, unexpected chain reactions.
And to really see this in action, we don't need to start with some complicated theory. All we need is one true story that kicks off with a simple, everyday moment.
This quote from a TEDx talk by Stuart Saunders just frames this perfectly. It's all about a single choice, a split-second decision on how you're going to interact with someone else.
Okay, so picture this. You've got a police officer, Officer White, who rolls up on a group of kids, and they're playing basketball right there in the middle of the street. I mean, this is a classic setup for conflict, right? A moment that could go in a dozen different ways.
And here it is. This is the pivot point. The standard playbook would be for the officer to tell them to move along, clear the street. It's the expected, default move. But Officer White, he took a beat, and he made a totally different choice.
That was it. So simple. A positive micro-decision. He gets out of his car not to tell them off, but to join in, to play a little basketball. You'd think, what could possibly come from that? Well, it turns out, a whole lot.
And this is the domino effect in all its glory. That one choice to play ball, it led to a viral video. That video caught the eye of Shaquille O'Neal. That led to Shaq coming out to play with them, which then led to a trip for all the kids to meet the Orlando Magic. And it didn't even stop there. Officer White started a program called #HoopsNotCrime that raised money to build brand new basketball courts so kids wouldn't have to play in the street anymore. All of that from one tiny choice.
So that's an incredible story, right? But is there a principle behind it all? A system we can actually understand? Well, let's get into the science of these tiny gains.
In his fantastic book, Atomic Habits, James Clear talks about this concept, which was pioneered by the British cycling coach Dave Brailsford. The whole idea is pretty simple. You break down everything you can think of that goes into what you do, and then you just improve each little part by just 1%. You'll get this huge increase when you put it all back together.
And here's the kicker. Here's why we so often miss this. We're always looking for that one giant leap, that one earth-shattering moment that changes everything. But a 1% improvement? You can't even see it. It's not remarkable. But over time, its power is absolutely unmatched.
I mean, just think about this for a second. If you get just 1% better each day for a single year, the math is staggering. You'll end up 37 times better by the end of it. 37! That's the mind-blowing power of tiny gains compounding over time.
This graph from Atomic Habits shows it so clearly. That top line, that's your 1% improvement. See how it starts slow, almost flat, but then it just rockets upward into these incredible results? But then, look at that bottom line. That's what happens when you get 1% worse each day. It shows how these tiny bad habits can compound too, pulling you almost all the way down to zero.
Okay, so we get the theory of 1% gains. But how does this actually work in the real world, in the chaos of our daily lives? Well, it all comes down to what James Clear calls decisive moments.
I just love this metaphor. Your habits aren't the final destination. They're the entry point. A tiny little habit can feel totally insignificant, but it's the thing that puts you on a certain path, and suddenly, boom, you're speeding towards the next behavior and the one after that.
Oh, come on. We have all been here, right? The key decision wasn't to waste 20 minutes scrolling. The real decisive moment was picking up your phone for just a second. That tiny little action was the on-ramp that basically dictated the next 20 minutes of your life. Think about it this way. Walking into a restaurant is a decisive moment, right? Once you're inside a steakhouse, you can order a sirloin, you can get a ribeye, but you can't get sushi. Your first small choice determines the entire menu of options available to you next. Your habits are literally shaping the road you're walking on.
So if these tiny little choices are so important, what's influencing them? A lot of the time, it's something we don't even see. It's our environment.
This research is just fascinating. So a study had two groups of students unscramble sentences. One group got words like chaotic, random. The other group got words like systematic, order. And afterwards, the group that was primed with those order words thought way more carefully about their next decisions. Subtle little cues in their environment literally changed how they thought.
And this line from Atomic Habits just nails it. We think we're in total control of our choices, but our surroundings are constantly, quietly nudging us down one path instead of another. The snacks you leave on your counter, the apps on your phone's home screen, even the words you just read, they're all shaping your next tiny decision.
All right, so the stakes are high, but the choices are small. How can we actually take control? How do we master these tiny, decisive moments instead of letting them master us?
Okay, one of the most practical, powerful strategies from Atomic Habits is something called the 2-minute rule. The goal here isn't to accomplish the whole thing at once. It's to master the art of just showing up. You're trying to build what he calls a gateway habit, an action that's so small, so easy, you basically can't say no to it.
Here's exactly how it works. The goal isn't to run 3 miles. It's to become the kind of person who just puts on their running shoes every day. Tying your shoes, taking out your yoga mat, reading a single page, these super simple actions are the on-ramps to the productive highways you actually want to be on.
And that really brings us full circle. You know, as Stuart Saunders said in his talk, when Malala first stood up for education or when Martin Luther King gave his first sermon, they weren't thinking about winning a Nobel Prize or changing the world. They were just making a single micro decision in that one moment. Real, meaningful change doesn't start with some macro impact. It starts with a micro choice.
So the takeaway here is this. You don't have to wait for some grand, perfect moment. The most important moment is always the next one. So, what's one tiny choice you can make right now that puts you on a slightly better path? Because as we've seen today, that's where everything, and I mean everything, begins.